Hey, this is Will, and in this lesson, we're going to be setting up our cloud servers for Kubernetes the hard way. So we're going to need to provision 5 cloud servers, and we talked a little bit more about what those servers are in the previous video where I talked about the in-state architecture of our cluster. But the 5 servers that we need are 2 Kubernetes controllers, 2 Kubernetes worker nodes, and 1 Kubernetes API load balancer. So that's a total of 5 servers, and the operating system that we're going to be using in this course is going to be Ubuntu 16. So I'm going to show you how to go ahead and set up those cloud servers. So I'm logged into linuxacademy.com, and I'm going to click on this cloud server tab here at the top. And as you can see, I have 6 cloud servers available, 1 through 6, and we're going to be using 5 of those for Kubernetes the hard way. So here under distribution, this is where I pick the operating system image that I want to use for each one of these servers. The default is CentOS 7, but we want Ubuntu 16. So I'm going to select Ubuntu 16, and then I'll just click here under Server Actions and select Create Server. So we need 5 of these, so I'm just going to do this for 4 more. These first 2 will wind up being my Kubernetes controllers, and then the second 2 will be my Kubernetes worker nodes. So I'm going to select Ubuntu 16 and start server for those. And I'm going to skip one. I'll just leave this 5th server blank, and down here for server 6, I'm going to select Ubuntu 16 and create server. And server number 6 is going to be my load balancer. Now, it's not necessary for you to do it exactly the same way I did, but some of the commands and things that I'll provide later on are going to depend on the order of these servers. So you may have to adapt some of the commands that you do later on if you put these in a different order, or if you use 5 instead of 6. I just left 5 blank so that there would be a space here, and I could easily differentiate these first 4 from this last one, which is going to be my load balancer. This is just for me to be able to visually keep these organized for myself. And again, it's probably going to be a little bit easier to follow along if you set yours up in exactly the same way that I did. I'm going to go ahead and add some labels to these. Right here next to tag, I can select a tag to label each one of these servers. And this doesn't actually change anything about the server. It's just to help you remember which one is which. So these first 2 I'm going to label as KubeMaster, because these first 2 I'm going to use as my Kubernetes control nodes. And the second 2 I'm just going to label as Kubernetes. There's not a Kubernetes worker label for me to choose, so I'm just going to pick the Kubernetes label. And for server number 6, I'm going to select Nginx server. There's not a generalized load balancer tag, but we're going to be using Nginx to do our load balancing, so it makes sense to select Nginx server because that's exactly what this is going to be. It's going to be an Nginx server. Now, if you want to, you can provision another server on number 5 to use as a workstation. So if you're on a Windows machine and you don't have easy access to a command line on your own personal machine, you may want to go ahead and provision a Linux machine for number 5 to work from. So these are my 5 servers, and they've been set up. As you can see, they've all started up now, and they have public IPs and private IPs, as well as host names. Now, there's a couple different ways to log into these servers. I can click on this login button, and it will actually open up a new tab of my browser where I can interact with the server right here in the browser. But I prefer to use a full SSH client, so I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to log in just with my SSH client. In order to do that, I'm going to need this public IP. So I'm going to copy the public IP, and I'm going to come over here to my shell terminal, and I'm going to go ahead and log in to that first server that's going to be my first Kubernetes controller. Now, the username for these servers is going to be user, and then I'm going to put @ and I'm going to paste in that public IP. So I'm going to SSH to that server using the username user and then the public IP of my first cloud server. Of course, the first time I connect to that IP, I need to type yes here, and it's going to ask me for a password. Now, Linux Academy cloud servers have a standardized password the first time you log in, and it's just 123456. So I'm going to type 123456, but that password is only temporary, and it's going to force me to change that password on the first login. So I'm going to type 123456 again to confirm the current password. And now I need to enter my new password. So you're going to want to pick a relatively secure password to go ahead and use for this. So I'm going to enter my new password. And then I need to retype that new password in order to confirm. And as soon as I do that, it's actually going to close the connection. So I will need to redo my login process. I'll do SSH user at that IP again. And this time I should be able to log in with my new password. And as you can see, I have successfully logged in. Now I've done that for the first server, and I need to repeat that process for the remaining 4 servers. So I'm not going to make you watch me do that, but I'm going to go ahead and do that off screen. So I have done the initial login steps now and set my new password for each one of my 5 cloud servers that I've set up. There's one other thing I want to make you aware of before I end this lesson, and that is this public and private IP that you have for each server. And you'll notice on this screen it says 114 minutes till timeout. Now I can refresh the timeout. If I click this button, it will refresh that timeout and it will go back to 120 minutes. So it starts at 120 minutes. I can refresh it at any time to bring it back to 120 minutes. But once that 120 minutes or 2 hours is over, what's going to happen is it's going to shut down these servers. Now that doesn't mean that I lost all my work that I did on these servers. It will just put it into the stop state. So I'm just going to click stop server right here to stop this server, and I'll confirm it by saying yes. It'll just stop the server, and I can just start it up again in order to get it back if it goes over that timeout. So if you're done working and you stop for the day and you go to bed and you come back tomorrow, all your servers are going to be stopped. That's fine. You just need to start them up again. Now you can also select delete server, and that will completely remove the server. So you'll lose all the changes that you made on the server if you delete it. So if you stop it, or if it stops because of the timeout, you can just restart it up again. It'll be right back the way that you left it. But if you delete it, it's going to go back to a clean slate, and you'll have to create a new one and potentially redo all the steps that you did on that server to get it back to the same state. There's another thing I want to show you about what happens when the server restarts. So when it stops because of the timeout, or if you stop it manually and then you go to start server again, what's going to happen is this public IP will change. So every time the server stops and then starts back up again, it's going to get a different public IP, but the private IP remains the same. As long as you don't delete the server, the private IP will always be the same. If you delete and then recreate a new one, the private IP will also change. But if you just stop and start, the private IP is going to stay the same. So as we go throughout this course, you'll see that we're going to reference that private IP a lot in some of the configurations that we do. We may use the public IP to connect, but we want all of our configurations to be based on the private IP, because if we base them on the public IP and the public IP changes, things are not going to work. So we want to make sure that we use that private IP. So now you have a basic understanding of some of the things you need to know to work with these cloud servers in the course, and you should have your 5 cloud servers set up and ready to go.